And welcome to another episode of More Than Dice. Oh, and of course, right off the bat, video issue. Let's see, Jason's
Oh, really?
Yeah, your Skype. I guess whenever something happened, it kind of wigged out for a second. I had to reset that. I'll fix the other one as it come up. Welcome to another episode of More Than Dice, episode 134. Kathy's still on our way back. We had a late start because we were doing some really awesome chatting in the pre-ramble. If you want to hear it or if you miss a pre-ramble, you can always find us on our Patreon. Link will be coming up, and you can check us out there. Thank you for the host, Monument Slow Fuse. It's so awesome for you to do that.
Who's that guy? Don't look at that guy. It says, of course, Jason is the crisp muncher. It's popcorn, man.
Popcorn.
Oh, I like popcorn. That's one of my favorite foods.
So today on More Than Dice, we have our special guest, Jason from Monument Hobbies. And there goes your video again. Like I said, I told you it would freak out on us. It always does. Here, we'll just make it big and beautiful.
Oh, I go like life size.
Oh, I know. You'll be life size in a little bit.
I'm life size right now.
For people who are brand new to the show, welcome to More Than Dice. Usually we have it's usually myself, Kathy, and John on, but of course every once in a while we have a good special guest on to come talk about some stuff. Today is Jason Craze from Monument Hobbies. Everybody knows him. If you don't know him, you will now. Before we get started, let's go ahead and thank all of our sponsors. We want to thank Muse on Minis for providing good hosting and everything. And if you want, you can follow the link to Muse on Minis to buy products. If you use the discount code More Than Dice, you'll get 10% off of their products. We want to thank Metalhead Minis, Lynn. Lynn is an awesome lady. If you don't know her, you should. She's an amazing person. She's actually selling some of our product, like our dice, our measuring widgets, all that other cool stuff. You can go check her out. We also want to thank Tectonic Craft Studios for being awesome and having good products for everybody. The MDF, if you don't know Dan, please go find him. Dan's an awesome person. We also want to thank CreatureCaster for awesome miniatures and us being a creature creator. We appreciate them. Kathy, did you ever get to finish your scissoring?
Oh no, I'm still working on her. She's been moved to the back of the queue because I have other actual work things that I need to finish.
You have actual work stuff.
Yeah.
And before we get started, we have to ask, Jason, what are you drinking tonight?
What am I drinking?
Yeah.
Water.
Okay.
Don't
All
hurt
right.
me. Don't be mad.
Water is an acceptable answer.
It is. There's nothing wrong with that.
When people ask me what I'm drinking, I'm like, vodka straight, no chaser.
Kathy, what are you drinking tonight?
Well, I too have water, but I also have I have this Ace pineapple craft cider. It is pineapple.
No gin and
cider.
tonic tonight?
It is no. I have cider, and it's delicious.
Somebody mark this day down.
I'm thinking about a cocktail that I can make involving rum and coconut milk with it.
Well, we should have done a bet to see what you were drinking, because we probably would have won that one and probably gotten so good.
Anytime you do a bet, it's just going to be a gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic.
I'm boring that way, except for tonight.
My drink tonight is, of course, Macallan 18, your scotch. I decided I would bring some more of this out and keep going with it. Before we do anything, we want to thank all of y'all for being here. We want to thank everybody that listens, watches, anywhere on any of our platforms. We greatly appreciate it. We want to thank all of our new followers. Anybody that's coming in and doing stuff, we appreciate you so much. You'll help keep the lights on. You help bring cool new stuff going on with this. And we appreciate it a lot. You mean a lot to us. Make sure you take care of yourself. Look out for others. Be safe. Only leave when you need to. Please wear a mask. I want to see each and every one of us back whenever we get back to our podcast. With that, cheers.
Cheers.
Tink.
Oh. Jason, how's that water?
It's delicious.
Is it straight straight from the tap,
It's
or
delicious.
Isn't
comes
that
in a
filtered?
big plastic bottle that I fill at the thing at the gas station.
right on?
From our
Oh,
office,
you do the
our
thing at the
office
gas
decanter.
station. Right on.
It's gas station water.
This gas station water.
I've been there. I've filled the jugs at the gas station.
Yep.
In both Arizona and Texas.
Yep. The office water jug gets its fill like once every couple of weeks over at the gas station down the street. So,
So
just part of
that's
the
that gourmet
chores
water.
I have to do.
That's
You're in
that.
Chicago. I can drink the water from the tap.
You
So-
can drink water from the tap here.
It tastes good and it's safe.
It's kind of like a science project if you do it here, but
Whether it grows something or gives you superpowers.
But yeah, you're just rolling the dice on what your powers are.
That's okay. I'll take that chance.
Yeah, right. Shoot spaghetti out of your fingers.
Okay.
The paint water cup is way over here. That's way, and see it. The handle is aimed away from me always with my paint water.
Oh
cup,
yeah.
so that I don't accidentally, subconsciously grab the handle.
Been there, done that. I
I
don't think
do
you.
that.
I have
I don't know how
not
you
done
do
that ever. Thank you very much. Although I have rinsed my brushes in tea before.
Yep.
When I was out at a hobby shop painting.
I've done that. You're like sitting there and you got a nice cup of tea next to you. Because I have these Star Wars mugs that I use for my paint water. And I've taken my brush and dipped it in my tea water. I'm like, damn it.
It's heartbreaking because I am not that person who will drink that water, nor am I that person who will lick the brushes. I find that to be disgusting.
I still like the brushes. So.
No.
So you're not a brush licker?
No.
You
Don't eat the paint. We
No.
actually put artificial donkey butt flavor in all of Pro Acryl so that people don't eat the paint.
That's wise. That's very wise. You
Yeah,
heard
we do
it.
it for
Heard it. Well, maybe not here first, but
We're looking out for you.
Guys-
I would have gone that one step further, and we put real donkey assholes in our paint so that you people won't lick your brushes.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So
I mean, it might not be toxic, but
What?
and there's a but.
there's a butt in your paint. Don't lick it because
Everybody
there's a
always,
butt. In
when
your
I say that, everybody always asks, so who exactly tested it to make sure it was actual donkey butt flavor?
Rush goes, but you will put sand. You will never let me forget that moment, will you? I was making bases on my stream, and I wanted to show the fine grain of the sand, so I stuck the back of my glue paintbrush in it to kind of move it around to show people how fine it was. And then I put the back end of my brush in my mouth. And there was sand still stuck to it.
And you always get on to me for putting my paintbrush in my mouth.
Yeah, but I'm not licking the bristles.
So, Jason, I just started knowing you and getting to know you a lot last year from Warfare Weekend and all this other stuff. And I actually knew about you beforehand because, I've watched your stream and, so on and so forth. Tell me a little bit about yourself and start from like the beginning of time because we have like an hour to fill. And so if you start from birth to now, I think we can get 20 minutes done.
Okay, so my birth came like right around the time that the stars formed, right? So there was no light at first, so it was a struggle, and then as light started coming, I am old though, so I just turned 50 this year, and I've been doing this hobby on and off throughout my 50 years for the fun of it, I guess, and my story's long and winding road, right? Like we said earlier during the ramble, like I found miniature in the hobby very early because my dad built scale models, and so that was around when he was young. My parents were 19, 20 when they had me, and so they were still young adults raising a kid. And so he was still doing his young adult stuff, which I was very thankful for, right? And later on, my stepdad was into comics, so I always had that nerd stuff somewhere in the household around me. My stepdad had a whole science fiction book library. He was part of the science fiction book club and Asimov's, an anthology and all these things that were always around me for, brain candy as I was nerding out as a kid. And it kind of all just came together, right? Because you have the love of plastic models, and I was building like military scale modeling. 1/35th scale was my scale that I like to deal in, and I would do that. I got very lucky at a very young age and got to meet Shepard Payne, who was like the master of diorama building, and was a hero of mine, if there is such a thing, and just got to learn some cool techniques for doing hobby back when there wasn't a product for everything. And so it was more crafting. it was life hacks in order to make all this stuff happen. And that's, I think, what really got me into it, is that back then it wasn't easy to like do a diorama. You couldn't just go get insulation foam and boards like you can. They didn't make that, so you were finding ways to do paper mache and to make these hills, and lots of glue all over the place, and sand in your mouth, like Kathy was talking. It was like everything that a young guy really wanted. It was like it was like wallowing around in the mud, but you made these cool things. It was awesome. So and that then kind of took off, and it was weird because as a kid I was into hockey and I was into skateboarding, and eventually then there's girls, and so life goes on. And I think we all have that story if you found the hobby or any of it at an early age, is that it kind of waxes and wanes throughout your life as you find other things you focus on, whether for me it was sports and playing sports and you didn't have time for it, or I got a girlfriend and you can't possibly tell a female that you paint little men. That doesn't go over well. So,
not back then. I mean, that's like the whole thing in D&D. You couldn't.
Well, yeah, because we're talking about the time where D&D was, and again, I've seen a resurgence of it here lately, that it's demonic, right? It was like that was the time that story was being told, right?
Oh, yeah.
When I first found miniatures, like we're talking about miniatures nowadays, was not scale modeling. That was widely accepted, right? You might not tell everybody if you were 30 years old and you built models, they might look at you a little funky, right? But it wasn't 40-year-old virgin yet, right? It was like,
yep.
That was a thing that you could do, but miniatures came about because of D&D, for me at least, right? And at the same time, I think we're talking early 80s. So at the same time, there was BattleTech. FASA was making things like Starfleet battles, and there weren't really miniatures for them, so to speak, but that started being a thing with a big chunky metal, Starship Enterprise. And I was blown away. I was like, oh my God, these things are great. Watching people paint, but then you couldn't fly a flag saying this is what I do. Back then it was like, number one, there were only 10 of you in the world that were doing it. And number two, you were all Satan worshipers and should be thrown in jail or shot. And the order of that didn't really matter. And so it was weird as a kid because you didn't have a voice. Your voice was your parents' voice, and you did what your parents said. And you went to school and you did the thing. So finding all that, I had very cool parents because they weren't worried about my decision making with regards to a game I was playing with friends. That it wasn't going to turn me into a Satan worshiper or something. But it was in the background, and it was always kind of weird to think of it from that perspective. But yeah, it just wasn't something you said. So you tended, I think, I don't know. I think nowadays it's different. Not to jump too far ahead, but now when we talk about the hobby, we can let our nerd flag fly a lot more predominantly and sooner, right? When you find the hobby now, as I introduce people over the years, I've built motorcycles and I've done music, and these are big parts of my life. And in those worlds, it wasn't filled with introverted nerds. It was filled with, and in some cases it was, but in a lot of cases it was, it was old graybeard Harley riding dudes and big heavy metal guys. And, so in that world, I'd take my me time and I'd paint miniatures, and so people would say, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm painting little men,
Oh, yeah.
But it was so matter of fact at that point. It was just something I did, and the creativity around it became the thing. And they'd look at it, wow, that's really cool. They might never do it, but then you'd introduce people to it, and they wouldn't be. There wasn't the same stigma around it. And it's funny because back then there kind of was. And as a young teenager, and then especially as you're going in through high school and then college, you definitely don't. You already got enough things working against you, right? The whole world's working against you as a teenager.
Oh yeah.
and puberty and whatever else is going on. You've got the crappy car, or you can't even afford a car, and so you're trying to impress, and you're trying to do, and you're trying to find your way in life, and so Little Men wasn't the way. So it's always like, you hid it underneath your coat, and you kind of did it in your room when nobody was looking, and and then that just kind of went on for years and years. It was a long time that I've been doing this. Geez, you come through and you go through all the 90s, and then in the late 90s on the East Coast, when I moved out there I sold my business. I had gone through the music industry had always been part of my life from like high school and bands, and then actually getting signed and playing and touring and doing all that stuff. And then as I exited doing the band thing, I started a company that built recording studios first, and then went into like residential audio and commercial audio. And I sold that in '97 and got out of that business, but took a job with one of the suppliers that I had been working with as a specifier for, and they moved me out to the East Coast. And when I went out there, one of the first things I did when I got out there, and I didn't know anybody really, I had contacts from music, but everybody had their lives and I wasn't really part of it. So as you're trying to find your momentum again when you change locations, because I was in Texas, and so going from Texas to New York was a big change. And I had friends and all that, but I was like, in my downtime, I'm like, well, I gotta find something to do. Well, I like comic books, so I'm gonna find a comic book store.
Mm-hmm.
And I found a comic book store and went in, and one of the first things they had that I saw that was really cool was somebody was playing Warhammer 40K.
Oh yeah.
And they had just come out with this Sisters of Battle army, and the Imperial Fists Battalion box or something like that had just come out. And and I was like blown away. So I bought that big box of yellow dudes, and it had like a Predator and Terminators and all the old metal, Mark 8 armor guys or whatever it was at the time. And I was just having a blast. I was like, oh my God, I have found my center again after a decade of not painting Little Men. And because I'd still been building models, but miniatures had fallen off because I didn't play D&D. I didn't play any of those tabletop games where miniatures had been a thing. So it just wasn't something I knew. Every now and then I'd find a box, and I think I had bought some Citadel Chaos Knights or something, the old ones that had the metal nipple on their arm. They were one-piece cast, and they had the plastic shield with a hole in it. You stuck it over the metal nipple, and the nipple was the centerpiece of the shield. You remember those?
Yep.
So I had picked up some of those along the way and painted them, and just because, it was always there. But then in the late 90s, it was off like a rocket again, because I found, and I was like, oh my God, there's this game with all these nerds, and you buy lots of these, and you paint them up, and you roll dice, and it's awesome. And so then I started painting again, and started painting for people and doing commissions, and that led on to, then we fast track, right? Because then I worked for GW in management during 2004 to 2007-ish, and out on the West Coast. I had moved around again, and it was just always part of what I did at that. And when it became a job, right? When it was, you were working at Games Workshop, and I had gone through my first divorce. I had divorced my first wife, and we were out in California. And so now you're in Southern California, working for Games Workshop, and letting your nerd flag fly while starting to date again, right? And so I felt like now I'm all the way back in high school, where it's like, do you tell people this stuff? This could be actually horrible for me. And but then I found out very quickly that it was kind of fun. I by that time, I'm, how old was I at that point? Oh my God, 32, 33, 34. So I'm 34 years old. I'm dating again for the first time in like 11 years, and painting Little Men is my job. And so you meet people, oh, what do you do? And literally was just like, I paint Little Men. And they'd spit, and laugh a little bit. No, really, what do you do? And I go, no, really, I work for a company that paints Little Men. It's all about Little Men. And I just started saying it and owning it like that, and it was a good turn for me to do that, and it became a great, deal. And but what it really got me into the fact that this is what I do. This is great to tell people, and you can become a voice for the hobby at that point, because then people ask questions, and you find that not everybody's afraid of you because you do this weird stuff. And as a lot of cases, it lets other people's creativity kind of shine through you and live vicariously through you and your weird hobby.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of, and I remember you talking about the stigma of the devils and all that stuff, and the movie Mazes and Monsters.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, all that came out and so on and so forth. So yeah, I remember that. And then, I'd say in the last 15 or so years, 15, 20 years or whatever, it's been like an explosion of, I'm a nerd, and I'm fucking proud to be a nerd
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
thing, and it's good because I mean, there's a lot of people that I mean, how many people follow your channel? How many people follow us? How many people go to conventions,
Yeah.
and we can look around. I mean, hell, Robin Williams played 40K and collected 40K. And what's this guy, the famous actor that's doing D&D? That's I can't remember his name.
Oh,
And
the guy from The Witcher.
yeah, I mean, we've got so many people that are not afraid to be Henry. Yeah, Cavill.
Yeah,
I
Henry
mean,
Cavill painting models. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, it's good because I mean, it's now okay, which is good because we want people to be okay with whatever. And yeah, also Joe Manganiello,
Yep.
doing D&D for people. I mean, that's just that's what it is, and that's good.
Well, it's a good creative outlet, and it's weird that there are, you see something new, and this goes for everything, not just miniatures, but you introduce something new that is a little weird, because it is all fantasy and sci-fi, although, it's funny because you take another end of our hobby and you take historic gaming, and you look at how long that's been around and how widely accepted that has been in a lot of societies and cultures, and yet you put fantastical fiction behind it and it becomes evil.
Yep.
We can reenact Napoleon and this stuff on the table and models and stuff, and yeah, it may seem a little weird and you may be a bit of a nerd, but it's not like people kick you out of the bar for it. And so it has been a big good turn, I think, in the 2000s specifically, like the last 20 years, like you said, that it's been more visible, more accepted. I think that video games has a lot to do with that too, because the nerdiness of playing games and doing that has become something that you can just now do, right? And you get people that you wouldn't look at and say, oh wait, you play MMOs for how long every week? And it's like, oh, that's just what I do. And I'm like, I would have never picked you for being a person that gets online and plays games all the time. So I think that there's lots of avenues now that kind of all are co-joined, even though they're different mediums, they're different avenues to allow that part of you to show. But now they've all been very accepted because, I mean, come on, there's just millions of us now, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
so you can't, now I can go anywhere in North America and England and Europe, and I can run into people that play games, whether it's video games or tabletop games, or hell, with the rise of board games now having miniatures, the word miniatures makes sense to so many more people because it's now not just an avatar of a dog on the Monopoly board game. It's a thing that is a nice detailed model, and people, even if they don't understand it and don't partake in it, can appreciate it. And I think that's the big thing, right? It's like collecting cars. Cars and motorcycles have always been around me, and it's not like everybody I've ever known in my life has enjoyed motorcycles, but everybody I've known in my life could understand why someone would enjoy motorcycles.
Yeah.
And so motorcycles were never the stigma, right? Old classic cars were never the stigma. It might profile you a little bit, especially when you're a big bearded tattooed guy, right? A lot of people might look and say, not talking to that guy, but that's a little bit different, because it didn't keep me from saying what I did. So it's just interesting, right? It's been a fun time to go from that and to look back now, considering that here I am talking to you guys on the internet, staring at my desk with a bunch of paints and little dudes on it. It is a long way from 1980s, sitting in my room on the floor, trying to figure out how to make my first airbrush work. It's a big deal, and I love it. I love that story from end to now is just so great. In my own head, it's probably a lot better in my head than it is for everybody else, but it's a hell of a journey to know that this stuff still exists and that it only just keeps getting better and better.
Well, one of the things that I always crack up about, and we covered this a while back, a long time ago, on the podcast, was talking about painting. I'm sure you came out of the womb carrying a brush, painting exceptionally awesome right off the bat, right? Like your first model would win a Golden Demon, right?
No, not a chance. Not a chance. It's funny because when you look at like art and anything, right? You get people that are just like, they just get music. Like I've known people through my music career where you could just hand them an instrument and they'd look at it for a minute and they just play it. A buddy of mine that was a motorcycle builder, he just said one day, I'm going to learn how to play steel guitar. I don't know if you know what a steel guitar is, but it's a ridiculous instrument. It's very difficult to learn how to play. And he just bought one and just started playing. And before I knew it, he was playing in a band. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I've sat down at a steel guitar and I'm like, nope, mind blown, not doing it.
Yeah.
And you know, but he could play the drums and he could play guitar and bass and it just worked. And so you'd be like, damn it, I'm jealous because if I'd have been able to do that, yada yada. But you know, art was always a thing for me, whether it was from the first time I drew Superman with Crayolas or whatever. I had good people in my family. My great grandmother was born in 1900 and she just passed away in 2004. So she lived to be 104 years old, and she was there alongside me my entire life. And she would always really drive me to do more with my artwork, and my grandmother too. And so anytime I draw something, the praise would get, you know, lavished on you for how great that looked, and even though it was garbage. But it was the right thing for me because it kept me doing it, right? It kept it, that positive driving energy is good, and so it kept me drawing. And you know, even if I'm tracing a comic book and then showing, look, I drew this, and no, I didn't trace it, what do you mean, you know, as a kid. And you know, which is always great when you're like 5 and here's your, it looks exactly like the comic book, I'm amazing. You know, but you go through all that and it was always just there, it was always something I did. And so the painting just became another challenge. And for me personally, through my life, it's always been about what's the next thing that I'm interested in that is going to be difficult to do, you know, because then that gives me, I know that there's a certain amount of time and effort I'll place into it that it'll be worthwhile. And it might be a weird way to think of things, but I've always just been like, I like the challenge of it. And so I'll bang my head against the wall and figure out how to make it work. And art was always just a real consistent challenge, and still is to this day. There's never a day where I sit down at the desk and don't try to come up with something that's like, what can we do here? You know, and the stream helps that. It's like, okay, we've painted yellow a million times. What can we do to paint yellow differently today to make it maybe easier for somebody to grasp how to paint yellow, or to do it so over the top that, you know, nobody wants to replicate what you've done. But there's always a challenge with artwork because it's chaos, right? It's managed chaos. It's like you just throw stuff together and you're creating from nothing in some cases. And so that's why I've always come back to it, I think, you know, whether it was the music or the drawing or the painting or building models or, you know, converting or whatever it is.
What is the one thing that, and I don't want to say mastered because we're always learning and we're always trying to figure out something and always get things, but during your painting of miniatures, what was the one thing that you banged your head on the most to get it look right to you? Like for me, I'm still trying to learn how to do non-metallic metals, and I'm just banging my head on trying to do stuff. What's the one thing or one technique that is just like you like remember it being like the hardest, that you're like, fuck it, I'll do it the old school way, or you know, whatever?
So I'll tell you, when I was young, and I'd be lying to you if I told you the exact age. Skin on my 1/35th scale military guys was the toughest thing in the world because you wanted to just buy the paint color like everything else, right? You'd buy primer, you'd prime your model. By this time I was airbrushing, even though it was with a little compressed air can Posh airbrush. But I was airbrushing my base coats for tanks, and so you'd really just buy the testers or the Tamiya color, Tamiya if you could afford it, testers if you couldn't, and you'd spray it, and you learn quickly thinning so that, you know, it would go on, but everything was kind of one color at that point still. You might dry brush a little bit. That I remember dry brushing blowing my mind even as a young kid. And then for me it was skin. And the reason I say that is because skin is such a fluid color base, right? There's so many fluctuating colors in flesh, regardless of Caucasian, you know, Hispanic, black, it doesn't matter. All skin colors have so much fluidity to the way color moves in them. It's not just a defined panel line on the side of a tank. And so for me, and again, I mentioned Shepard Payne, but Shepard Payne broke the mold for me. I was sitting in a class that I had a ridiculous opportunity to sit in a kind of a class that had not even been planned, but he was in town and he knew the people at Crown Hobbies in Dallas, Texas. And at Crown Hobbies was just this amazing wealth of old graybeard information, and they never wanted to talk to me because I was some little, you know, booger picking kid who didn't know anything and wanted to ask everything. And so I just was not their customer base. I was not the guy whose extra paycheck went to buy this new product. I was the kid who wasn't going to spend any money, whose grandmother was shopping next door and who was just chewing up their time. And but I had the opportunity to sit down in a class that they did that I don't even remember what the class was about. But as we were painting, a figure, I was just taking my one color of skin tone and I was painting the face. And everybody else's looked so much better than mine. And I was just bummed. And he came over and literally took the time to show me what you could do. And it was with oil paints at the time, right? Because that was back in the day. You had enamels, you had some of the Tamiya colors, but they didn't have a very big palette. And he was doing it. He did all his skin with oils back then. And so he took some oil paint. He showed me how to do it. And literally, in my first try, had gotten the grasp of a little bit of value, a little bit of tonal change, and I had shaded from forehead to chin, a guy, and given him 5 o'clock shadow. And it probably looked it probably looked absolutely freaking horrible. But I was so proud of that because I felt like I had read how to build dioramas from this man, and it was the book that I'd go to sleep with under my pillow, hoping I'd gain some knowledge, and you'd flip the pages and you'd see how he painted guys. And in there was a diorama of some Spartans that he had done, if I remember correctly. And it was like this guy jumping with a spear and the medals and the skin, and it looked like a photograph to me as a kid. And so when I did that, it really clicked. And it showed me that from that day forward, it wasn't about the color you had in front of you. It was about how light played on a model. And we talk about that every day when I teach painting. Is about that. It's about light, not about color. And so that's really where it started. If I could literally throw it out there. From then, I don't want to say everything got easier, but it really did. Everything else started to make sense and the blocks started to fall into place just because of a simple 30-minute conversation about why my skin looked horrible on this model. Because I was just painting the same bright skin color and all the shadows and everything. And so that one thing, and it was probably just because he had the right words, I didn't know it then, but that's why it clicked. It might not have clicked if it was somebody else telling me the same thing, and I might be, pounding sand right now, wishing I could paint better. But for me, that was what did it. And I think that, rather than it being any one technique, because then every technique kind of, again, was something I felt like was a challenge, but I take what I knew in the background and just attack that new challenge. And yeah, so that's the longest story I've ever said, that it was a face I painted in 1984 or something like that.
So let's fast forward to a few millennia, and now you have your company. And of course, I'm sure when you Twitch stream, you automatically had 7,000 followers like everybody else does. It just magically happens, and you've got your own.
Yes.
Yeah, it just magically, instantly partner, all that good stuff right off the bat.
Yes.
And you have Monument Hobbies. Why, and Slow Fuse Gaming? I mean, why branch off? Is this just the next step or what?
So, it's funny because the journey into Slow Fuse Gaming, it was funny because that was me playing video games. And some of the people in my video gaming group we were playing like MOBAs and competitive, we had a team thing and we would get together and practice. And as we're doing this, I was always cracking jokes and stuff, and on TeamSpeak, not Discord. And the bastards. And but we were joking around and playing the game and having some fun. And they were like, "You should stream this." And I didn't have any clue what they were talking about. I was like, "What are you talking about? Stream?" They're like, "Yeah, you should stream this. There's this thing called Justin TV. And people play video games, and people will actually come and watch you and like donate money to you. You can make money doing this, And I was like, nah, not a chance, man. That's stupid. I have fun playing with you guys. I'm not going to do it. Well, eventually they beat on me enough to where it was like, no, we really ought to do that, because if we have the stream, we could have other people who can't be playing with us right now watching us while we talk about this, and it would be really great. Because until then, people were just able to sit in chat and listen. And, you talk about, hey, jungler, you need to start, top and then work your way back and do all this stuff. And now they could watch it. So I was like, okay, fine. So I had good internet. We started streaming. I didn't even have a face cam. We were just playing and yapping and all that. We got it working. That became Slow Fuse Gaming. And so Justin TV right at the end there turned into Twitch. Twitch then, kept the ball rolling, and it went on and on. And, until 2015, I think it was, late 2014, early 2015, where I was like, you know what? Video games aren't my gig anymore. Like, I'm getting tired of the same games over and over again. I'm getting tired of the PvP. I was finding myself grumpy during my streams. I was losing viewers. Viewers were contacting me in the background saying, man, I've watched you for years, and it's always been a lot of fun, but your attitudes change. It's tough to watch you. And so it was a big thing that set me on a different path. I was like, yeah, I'm just not having fun, you know. And so if my viewers are watching and saying, hey, you're different and we don't like it, I was like, you know, you had two chances to do stuff, maybe more, but in my head I was like, well, I can either tell them they're wrong and keep doing what I'm doing, or I can be honest with myself and say I'm not having any fun doing this anymore. And when I said I wasn't having fun doing it anymore, I also was like, but I really like streaming. You know, it had become part of my daily life. I was doing it full time. And then, well, I say full time, part time, and I'm building motorcycles in the background. And, you know, but I had moved to Arizona. I was in a weird spot where I was like, I'm just going to sell my whole metal shop and I'm just going to figure out something else to do. And I did. I was like, screw it. I'm going to stop playing video games. You know, I'm going to paint my models. Because one night I went just looking around or stumbled upon a stream where somebody was painting a, you know, Warhammer model. And I was like, wow, I never thought about doing that live. Like, and there were 20 or 30 people watching this guy. And so I was like, you know, smaller crowd, you know, but I think, and he wasn't even doing anything. He wasn't interacting with the crowd much, whoever it was. I don't remember who it was, and no negative on that person, but it's just like, it wasn't formatted. It was just somebody painting and talking with people in chat. And I was like, I could do that. You know, I've been painting for decades. And so I did. So I just set up everything new and sold my metal shop and said, all right, I'm going to give this a year and I'm going to keep doing this for a year or 6 months, I might even said, and we'll see how it takes off. And within 6 months, we were doing giveaways. We were sponsored. We had opened up the Slow Fuse Gaming store where we were selling Vallejo and Army Painter and Winsor Newton and all of these products that we were using on our stream. And I had said, this is the business I want to do, you know. But it was still called Slow Fuse Gaming because that's what my channel was called, you know. And that wasn't an intention of mine. Slow Fuse was a name that came partly because of the tattoos on my knuckles that say slow burn, but I couldn't be slow burn because that was already taken. And so I said, well, Slow Fuse sounds good. And so we just became Slow Fuse. And it never really had a whole lot of thought other than that behind it. Now we're doing business and now it's like, oh, well, we're already down this road and we're painting, we're gaining momentum. There's more people coming. The creative side of this was growing for us on Twitch, and I could see it being a good vehicle for us. And so I was like, well, something needs to happen here. And the first thing was that, you know, we started manufacturing product. So we built our brushes, right? We found a partner and we did our first line of brushes. They were horrible. They were great and horrible because when they were good, they were great. When they were bad, they were horrible. So I had been in manufacturing, you know, in the background doing everything from motorcycles to electronics for years. And so I had partners in that world. So I was working to make better brushes. How can we do this? And I was like, okay, so now we've made brushes called Slow Fuse Gaming, and it dawned on me that, well, nobody's going to take us seriously because that name's garbage. You know, it not garbage. You know, I don't want to be too hard on myself, but it made it feel more low quality, quick, you know, cheap, I guess. And so we were kind of thinking, well, what can we do to, you know, get a brand that we want to get behind as we start making quality products? Because now I had started going in and we were hand mixing our own paint. You know, we were making our own white paint because whites in the hobby suck. So I was making an artist grade white paint, so you didn't have to use oils and you didn't have to use, like, you know, schminky acrylics or something like that where you spend a lot of time on the palette getting the right consistency. I was like, I'm going to make a good liquid acrylic paint that gives you everything you want out of those high-end, you know, artist acrylics in a bottle that you just shake and you go. And so that was the goal. And so, but I was like, but before we commit to this, number one, because it's a lot of money, right? To start making paint is a ridiculous investment. And the people I was talking with didn't even want to talk to us. And it was like, okay, this is real business. Like this, we have to kick into, are we serious about this? And if we're serious about it, what else do we need to do? And Slow Fuse Gaming needed to go away, and we needed to find a way to rebrand and keep all of our people with us. But, you know, show the world that we're serious about this. It's not just some also ran thing we were doing. And, you know, right about that time is when Pete from Creature Caster, we had met them at Adepticons and really liked them. And so we sat down and he was like, hey, we really like what you're doing with the hobby products. It's a goal of Creature Caster to be able to offer not only the models, but the hobby products and do kind of the Games Workshop thing where it's a one-stop shop, right? You got great models, you got the tools to paint and build the models with. And I was like, perfect. Like I had never really had a goal of making the models side of it, but I understood that the importance of, wow, that would be great. And we really like their models. And so we, you know, we started, and it just fit, right? Because we're like, well, we need to rebrand right now. This gives us the ability to then move forward with that branding. And so we got together, Creature Caster couldn't we couldn't merge the companies because Creature Caster had a third partner that didn't want to do that. So there was some struggle there that didn't want to happen. They just wanted to focus on models. So we made Monument, and we all sat down in a group, came up with a name, liked it, and Monument Hobbies was born. And from there, it's been a tumultuous story from there, but that was it. It just kind of all was a direction that we knew in our head. Jen and I knew in our head needed to happen if this was the road we wanted to go down. If we were serious about becoming a manufacturer in the hobby industry, then those were all the things that needed to be done. We didn't need to join forces with other people, but we needed a brand, and we needed to really focus in on the products. And it's one of those crap or get off the pot kind of moments. And
well, I know that. See, I've had your paint since Warfare Weekend of last year because I picked up all the stuff, and of course real life happens, and I haven't been able to use them much because of course running a convention takes a bit of time, and of course then all the COVID stuff, and then it's like.
Excuses.
Yeah. But
there's never a time to not hobby, my friend.
I know. Everything, John is isn't obvious of that because I think he's almost on 1,000 days straight of doing a hobby.
That's so awesome, man.
Yeah.
I can't say that. There's days where I'm like, screw it, I'm not touching anything.
Yeah. I think he's almost on 1,000-day hobby streak.
That's so good.
And so I was able to get, and I've been using some of your stuff. Like the one thing that I definitely picked up right off the bat, I was like, I needed a white, and for me, every white out there sucks ass. I don't care what anybody says. It's gloopy, it's sticky, it dries up super quick.
It's chalky.
It's chalky and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, Jason, impress me. And fuck yeah, this was good. I was really, really happy with it because I'm always cautious about spending money on a bunch of paints and everything.
Sure.
And because, money's always tight everywhere. Yep. And so I took and I put that white down, and I was like, hell yes. I was super, super happy with it. The black, I used the black on my Warcaster models, and it dries really flat. And since I can't seal these models because I'm using a color shift paint,
cool.
I don't want to get rid of the color shift. It's that perfect flat that I like. I'm going to flip over to this camera real quick, and then we'll flip over. I got a little bit on mine, and let me put you. Of course, my video is not going to. It's actually your video that's up right now.
Hi, I'm huge now.
Yes,
I'm big in Japan.
You're big in Japan. Hold on. My camera, of course, is not going to work. Thank you so much. Give me 1 second so I can get this in video capture device. Because I was going to show, because if anybody's been following what I've been doing on my Facebook, I've been painting the Oni masks. And of course, it's not going to come up now. Let me see if I can. There we go.
The joy of Skype.
Yes. This is the joy of OBS. Let me do this. I'll flip it around. So I have been painting Oni Mask, and I used your paints and everything, and I've got to switch it and do it backwards because, of course, the camera's backwards. But
awesome.
This one, it primed black, and I used your red. I airbrushed your red, which your paints do really good on airbrush. I just added a little bit of thinner because, I think you should always thin your paints. And then the white here was pretty much one single coat of white over black.
Isn't that crazy?
And it's really good. I was really impressed. I was really happy. This was the one I did, and I used your primary red color. The
Pyro, old Pyro.
Yeah, old Pyro red. And then did a wash over red and black in it to get the little, the little bit of color in the sides and such, and everything.
Awesome. Good.
And it was really, really good. And then I did this one, and this one, someone called it's my chocolate mask, but I used your burnt sienna and did the same thing, and then took and just dry brushed it up just to get a little bit of a look to it and such. And I was really, really happy with it. One of the things, maybe so I don't know if I can get this model to show up really well. This is going to be really hard because it's super, super tiny. But the black in that, you can barely see it because it's not going to focus very well. Oh, come on, focus. But I used your black in there, and I was really, really impressed with that. So I'm going to cut that out and put you in there because we're going to want to talk about some of the stuff that you have, and I'll fix your camera because, of course, technology is our friend. Because I know that you have some stuff that you wanted to show and say about, because I wanted to have a question. Now, I have your entire paint line. I haven't used your metallics yet, but I will because, like I said, I'm going to be doing that one Cyberpunk Oni mask pretty soon. I'm going to be painting that metallics. I'm going to be using your metallics on that. But something that I wanted to talk about is your transparents. Sure. That's something new to me because someone says, oh, they're just contrast paints. I can already see your head shaking. Talk about your transparents because I think that's something new for a lot of people that they don't understand. Because, I mean, your other colors, they're colors, usable, you paint, do with them. But your transparents are something different.
Yeah. Yeah, the transparents are, it's a fun story because at first we were talking and, this was something that kind of came out of the pipe of development where we were like, okay, well, we have all this capability. We've got these, what we call our magic mediums, right? Because the real truth to any paint and what makes it different is going to be the medium or combination of mediums that you use that, increase, decrease the fluidity and how the pigment stabilizes in the suspension and so on and so forth, all the science about it, right? And we had this one that was super low viscosity, and I was like, wow, it's kind of like an ink, but not like an ink because it's a pure acrylic paint, so it's not an acrylic ink. It's not an anything, right? This is a new thing, but we weren't like at the point where we were developing the paints, we were like, it doesn't fit. Like we need a base set of colors. We were just launching the line and planning for that. So it went on a shelf, boom. and it was really funny because one day on stream, we were doing a thing and I don't remember what the thing was. We were painting a thing and I wanted the thing to have a little bit more oomph in the reds. And I was like, what I really need is I really need like a red ink that isn't an ink. Like I love inks, but if you've used acrylic or India inks or anything like that when you're painting, they have a different workability to them, right? So they tend to dry pretty quick, but loosen back up when you get them wet again, right? Because whether or not it's a dye or an acrylic suspension has a lot to play in there. But the mediums and stuff, sometimes if you glaze with them really thin, then if you don't varnish with them first and you go back with another wet layer of paint over the top, they'll move. And so they just have a little bit of a different way of working, but they're a great way to get like what I'll call high transparency or what would we call it? Low translucence, I guess. You can see through them, but they're also very vibrant. So they have a really neat, powerful tool that they give you for painting. Because I like to do a lot of filtering. I like to do a lot of paint my base colors to get my value and volume set and then hit them with the color over the top of that. And so we were doing that thing, whatever that thing was, on stream, and I was like, I want this to be more red, but I'd already pushed my red paint as far as I wanted, and I didn't want to mix another paint. I was being lazy, and I was like, I have this. And I said, let's just for, shits and giggles, let's do this thing. And so I had this paint. I opened it up live on stream, had not used it since testing, 6 months prior or whatever, and went through and got a little wet and put it on my thumb like I do, and then hit it on the model, and everybody in chat and myself included were all like, our jaws hit the table. It was like instantaneously the perfect thing for what I was trying to do. Didn't act like an ink. It didn't pool like a wash. It didn't push around and give you variable value like the contrast paints will. It was exactly what you wanted. It was the color you wanted, where you wanted it, which is how I teach people to paint. And I was like, oh. Yeah. I was like, we might have a hit here. And so immediately got in with the group, and I was like, so remember that thing that we forgot about or didn't want to talk about back when? And nobody was interested in doing it because the paints had come out. They were doing really well. We're trying to figure out how to keep production moving and how to form the business around doing all of this. And in the middle of it, I'm like, we got to make these, right? So we're planning our expansion sets, and expansion 2 was already planned, which was an additional 16 colors. And those colors were already proven out. I had already approved them all for manufacture, and we were just waiting on the raw materials and getting it all set up. And now expansion 3, I was like, needs to be these. Like, we need to get 8 or 9 of these colors, and that's what this needs to be. These are bitchin'. I will use these, and if all I have to do is push these to get people to understand, I will push these and people will buy them, because I think they'll see that it's a much easier way to get filters than glazing with your standard opaque paints and such like that. And we taught a lot of glazing, and so I was like, this is kind of a miracle deal, and that's how it started. And so the transparent paints are just that. They are another magic medium that we've been able to suspend very vibrant pigmentation in. In most cases, they're all single pigment paints, which in our hobby is a rarity to some extent, but they're all very base paints. So the red is actually a little bit more of a magenta at the end of the scale because it's a single pigment paint, the blue and all of that. So really, really vibrant, right? And will hold true to that vibrancy because no matter how thin you take them, you don't get any separation of multiple colors that are in the paint at all. It stays the color you expected it to. It just goes up and down and like tint, tone, and shade. And so we started pushing them. We immediately went to manufacturer. We put them out, and then I started using them on the stream and showing people how it can make the painting process a little bit more repetitive and give you non-repetitive results. Does that make sense? So like if you're going to spend a lot of time painting distressed leather on a model, that's sometimes not a easy task to replicate across a bunch of models in like an army, right? You generally are going to cut some corners so that you can get all your dudes done, because the leather is probably not the biggest part. You know, holsters on Space Marines, not the biggest part. Who cares? Paint them brown, highlight it a little bit, go.
Yeah.
This allows you to make it look like you spent a lot more time on it, and you know, like a wash would or like a contrast paint might, but really specific, and still let that stuff happen. So we would go through and paint leather and use like dark brown and mid brown and light brown, just real quick, sketchy on there, and everybody would be like, that looks horrible. You put brown transparent paint over it, it's like, that looks absolutely freaking awesome. And it took that easy sloppy paint that you want to do quick and then gave you a method to pull it all together, blur the blending, make it look like you'd spent a lot more time on it. And I was like, these are great cheater paints. They're also paints that help you at the top end of your scale when you're spending tons of time on a model to work in those filter nuances like you want, because you can mix them in with your opaque paints, mix them together to get any color, mix them with your metallics, which is where they just explode. Because if you take like a bronze metallic and put just a spot of green transparent in it, you'll just die for your base color for bronzes, because it gives you that tarnished bronze color without getting rid of the metallic sheen of the paints. So they just make all your painting better, kind of no matter what you want to do. We've been doing these Space Marines lately, and the Space Marines are all using those transparents in one way or another. As a matter of fact, let me see if I can get my camera to pull up here.
While you're doing that, Legionnaires has a question. Do pro acrylics store well? He has a bad habit of not touching his paints for months.
Yes, they do. Each bottle is absolutely sealed. So you wind up with not only the fact that when you buy them new, they have a, you know, like a safety seal, like your latest prescription would. So until you open that, they're going to stay great. Now, like any acrylic paint, gravity will pull the pigment out of suspension and pile that pigment up at the bottom of the bottle, and you have to shake it to get it to remix. But our mediums are formulated so that they will always go through and then remix. So hopefully you won't have a problem. And then after, you know, storing them for 2 years, you come back, they still, even if you've opened them, they have a seal in there that keeps them fresh all the time. So
there you go. We were like, okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah, because I wanted, because you're actually doing something on stream right now with your Space Marines. You actually have a special thing going on. It's not just you're painting Space Marines. You're doing something special on your stream.
Yeah, what we've been doing is going through the motions of, you know, 9th edition and Dominus came out. We always like to take some of that hype and show people how to incorporate our products into it. So we get, one of the biggest questions we're always asked is, how do I use your colors? Because people get some of the paints, test them, whether they get them through winning on someplace, or they buy a base set and they love them and they're like, okay, how do I replace the colors I know in my head, whether it's, you know, company A, B, or C? I use these colors. What do I need to use now to paint this army I want to paint? And the biggest one, believe it or not, is Ultramarines. So everybody, you know, if I could take all the how do you paint Ultramarines with Pro Acryl, it's always like, you know, okay, well, I need to show people how to paint Ultramarines, because I'm not going to play Ultramarines, but here, let's paint Ultramarines. So we decided through July and August we'd do the Marine a Week thing, and it became the Marine month, even though it's longer than a month. And we said, what we're going to do is sit down and show people from start to finish how in a week's time, 4 streams, we're going to paint a Marine, and, you know, focus on Ultramarines. We've done Dark Angels and Raven Guard as well. So, you know, and now the Imperial Fist guy. And so we take it and we show you how the colors will work for you, and then also layer on top of that techniques like how the transparents and every one of these models, the bulk of what you're seeing color wise is done with our transparent paints. Now, when I say that,
What type of undercoat? White or black?
what's that?
Your primer, is it a white or a black?
It's a black. All of these are done in black primer.
Okay, because I mean, with contrast, you have to have a white primer on.
Yeah, because it's more of a like a
dye.
polyurethane stain, right?
Yeah.
It's like the acrylic poly shades from Minwax, right? So it is going to create its darkness in your midtones based off of that lighter backdrop.
Correct.
And what we're doing here is creating the backdrop to give it a little bit more depth immediately. All of these models are done black primer with then a white pre-shade. A lot of people call it a zenithal highlight. And so you'll do a zenithal highlight, get your lighting dynamics the way you want to on the model really quickly, and then going back over that with a combination of our regular opaque paints, and then at the end pulling it all together with a final filter of transparent. So the last thing that we do prior to highlight, like brush highlights, is hit all these with the transparent paint. So in like the yellow guy, the Imperial Fist that we're doing right now, had no true yellow on him before he got like this. So the paint that we used was yellow ochre, right? And then we went over the top of that with pale yellow for highlights. And so what you're left with is nothing that looks like Imperial Fist yellow. But then the yellow transparent over the top of those colors gave us the yellow that you see on the Marine right now. So
it actually looks very metallic.
Yeah, well, I've gone in and I've done like non-metallic sheen and stuff
Correct.
like that on it with the brush. But the overall yellow is transparent yellow. But it does enough covering of the highlights that were done in this color that I didn't want to see on the model that's too pale, right? And pulls it in with the midtone, this darker midtone of ochre that we put on there to give you a nice depth where I still get kind of the orangey shadows, and we actually use like a very deep brown red called mahogany in the deepest shadows. So we get a lot of depth without having to worry about blending that with the brush. I literally just slap the paint on, airbrush or brush, and then you use the transparent to smooth it all out and still allow all that brightness and darkness to show through, so you don't have to change any of it. So it's super powerful. It allows you to kind of, I hate the word cheat, but it does. It allows you to cheat because you can take rougher painting techniques and pull them together at the end, not only for getting the right color, but also for smoothing out some of your blends, smoothing out some of your textures, allows you to do this in a quick manner. Like I said, I mean, I usually paint the slowest in the world, but we've been doing a Marine a week and, getting very good quality out of them so that, showing people a way that you can do this. And I could have painted, a full squad of these guys in the same time if I wasn't streaming. But again, it's taking the tools that we've created and letting you play and use them and how you stage them together to allow you to get a lot more out of your models without really putting a lot more effort. You're just having to kind of rethink what color you put first and then what color you're putting last.
Okay, now you did recently change bottles. What was the reason behind? Because I mean, I've got some of your newer bottles and your older bottles. Because I actually, whenever I got back from Warfare Weekend, I was like, I need a new paint rack, and so I 3D printed a whole bunch of paint racks. And your older bottles, they're the ones that you were showing, but you switch. Yeah, that was right there. And then you went to the newer bottles. Why the change in the bottles?
So we had always wanted to offer more paint for the same price. And there was a snafu in the very beginning with the bottle manufacturer. The bottles are the only thing we don't make ourselves. And so when we went to the bottle manufacturer initially and we wanted to get this, glue twist type cap, and we were like, okay, well, we want to do 22 mil, or I think at the time it was like 20 mil bottles. That wasn't a thing that exists. And so when we were looking to tool up for the bottle, and it was all like, okay, yeah, and we'll get all that right. And then when they sent them, they were wrong. And so there was either a miscommunicate, who knows, right? And so it didn't happen, and we had these. And so I think even on, you'll see that it says 20 mil on the bottle, and we had to get little stickers that went over that told you that was 17 mil. And so it was just a miscommunication in manufacturing. but it was always there. And so we were like, okay, well, now we have to figure out, now that we have these paints that everybody loves and we're selling them, how are we going to do this? And so we just bit the bullet. We were like, well, we're going to raise the price. It went up 25 cents a bottle. And then we're just going to release the paints again. And when we go and add another set, we're going to get 22 mil bottles instead of 17. And so it did. It was a bummer because we sell our own paint racks and all of that. And so we were like, oh, people that bought racks for their Pro paints, and now they got to get. But we gave everybody a 50% discount if they replaced their racks, or bought the racks to fit the new paint. So I feel like we did the right thing to keep people feeling like they hadn't messed up or that we hadn't taken advantage of them.
Oh yeah.
And at the end of the day, you got more paint. I mean, the reality is our goal has always been that for the price you would pay for a bottle of hobby paint, we want you to feel like you get more out of it. And when it's better paint, I mean, I'm kind of old school that way. I feel like if you're going to do business with me, I want you to continue doing business with me. And I'm not going to do it by offering you sales and cheap product. I'm going to offer the best product, and I'm going to always evaluate what we need to do around here to make money. And those two come together in whatever that value needs to be. And for us, it was that 22 mil, but we actually 2 mil more than we expected to offer. We had to retool the bottle. We paid to make that custom bottle for us. We're the only people that have that size bottle. And so it was worth it. It was definitely worth it. I think that people have been super stoked now. As a web only company right now, it's like, well, we want to make sure your paint lasts, so you don't have to, oh my God, I ran out of my favorite color. We want to make that time between that happening as long as possible. And,
well,
that's just
I for one am glad that you went with the dropper or twist top. One of my biggest pet peeves is flip tops that either A, don't stay closed, B, dry out, or the lid breaks constantly from opening and using. And Legionnaires says that now that he's seen your caps, with your twist caps, he's definitely interested in your product, because to me that's a big thing. I don't want to buy a bottle of paint, have it sit on the shelf for about a month, and I go back and use it and it's dried out because either it didn't get a great seal or the lid has been messed up. And so I like that.
Well, and like people had asked, right, the idea on freshness is that every time you go and get a new paint, it has a seal over the top of the bottle. All of mine are open because we use them, obviously.
What?
But it comes with a freshness seal and an inner gasket. So that inner gasket stays. And so now when you close our bottle, you get a real closure here on our bottle design. And now you get a seal so that as long as it's, screwed down tight, you've got a complete sealed bottle of paint. Now the thing is you'll find out very quickly if you travel or change elevation with these, you need to crack the top because they are sealed. So if you fly with our paints, be careful. You'll shake them up, you'll twist the cap, it'll shoot 2 feet out because it's pressurized. So we get a lot of people that have a lot of fun with that. They're like, I went to Adepticon and I opened my paint and it shot in the eye, so we're like, well, we had 2 choices. We wanted to keep the paint fresh because we do know that a lot of people aren't painting every day, and yet you don't want to ever come back and have this standard, like, well, the cap doesn't seal, so air's in there, and so the paint's drying from the top down, and you wind up having the water evaporate out of the medium. You can't really ever get the medium to go back. That's just generally. I've been an artist for a long time. I've dealt with these paints for a long time. And so for me, it's like, what can we do that makes our paint relevant? And so we were like, we need to make it handle these things that I view as being problems, whether it's how it works off as you're painting and putting it on the model, or how it sits on the shelf when you're not even using it. We've just kind of tried to look at all of that.
So one of Captain Mizzy, she got your paints at Warfare Weekend, and she posted a picture of your yellow because she's really liking it.
Awesome.
And such. So
awesome.
Because yellow is another color that is a pain in the ass to paint. I don't care what anybody says, because it's really hard to cover. It's gloopy. You name it. It's such a pain in the butt. I haven't had a chance to use your yellow yet because I haven't had anything that I need to paint yellow. But one of the things I'm going to do,
right? Because like on this guy, I didn't use any of our golden yellow. Right? It's the I always joke that the best way to paint yellows and whites and those problematic colors is to not use much of them, right? Because you're really not looking for much of your work to be golden yellow, right? Like it's very rare that you'll paint something that you want it to be golden yellow from top to bottom with no variation in color. So you typically don't need to use a whole lot of it. You just need to set up all the colors underneath it so they live very well with the yellow that you do put on it. So shadows and browns or oranges or reds work really well. And then your mid-tones and like the ochres and such. Then when you put the yellow over the top, you don't have to use very much of it. You're not fighting it much, but you're still getting the feel at the end of the day that it is yellow.
So you just moved over to selling your paints and you're getting it out to everybody and good distribution. What's the next step in Monument Hobbies?
Ooh, boy. There's so much. Like, where do I even start, right? So we've gone through a lot here with regards to getting the company tooled up and ready to meet for production in the size that we really want to do it. Our goal for the beginning of 2020 was to start reaching out and opening up retailers across the globe, so that, you know, the momentum that we've seen with the paint so far has been so far past our expectations that it's thrown us into a point that we didn't think we'd be at right now, which is great. Like, we lavish praise on the community all the time for just supporting us the way they have and loving the products and talking about the products and showing them to their friends. And, you know, I saw Russ in chat talking about how he's given, like, you know, half of his paint collection away to people that wanted to try it. That's the kind of fervor that's gotten up with the paints. And so it's put us ahead of the curve with regards to, okay, well, what we were planning to do in 2021, we need to move to 2020, because we want to make sure that people can get their hands on it easier. And so our goal has always been, okay, well, when the breadth of the line reaches a certain point, we can put it in stores. And that way, if you run out of white, you just run to your store and you buy white. And you don't have to go on the internet and pay shipping for one bottle of paint, which makes it ridiculous. And so we've always had that as a goal. Obviously, COVID set that back a bit. It's hit everything from supply chain issues for getting product to where we can make it, to stores not being open, right? And but we're still on that line. So we've got a lot of retailers set up for the end of the year. We're hoping that before the holidays, we can get some of those in North America set up to where our product is on the shelves, out in stores. You know, it's really about extending our reach right now. We just set up Element Games over in the UK. So we're partnering with them. They will be carrying our product. And we're hoping that, you know, I don't want to commit, but sometime like late September, early October, they'll have our product for sale, both on the website and then also going out to local stores in the UK. It's been very difficult in the UK and the EU to get our product in a you know, like a consistent basis. When we partnered with Creature Caster to extend and take advantage of the Creature Caster store, we had a US store, a Canadian store, a EU store, and a UK store. But the EU and the UK were always hard to continue to keep stocked because of shipping and logistics issues, and just the handoff between the two companies was always very kludgy. And okay, Monument's doing this thing, it needs to fit with Creature Caster's way of doing things and how they ship stuff out, and we always pushed for time and never seemed to work right. So we really said, well, we need to withdraw and pull it all back into control for our production the way we want to do it on our time scale and with our voice, so that the marketing and everything works together. And so we've done it. And we've taken this COVID time to be able to really evaluate and see what works. We kind of know now. We've been selling the paints for 2 years, and the brushes for longer, and the brush soap and all the other products that we have got a lot of momentum behind them. And so now we kind of have been able to take all that and say, okay, let's scale it better so that we can make sure that products don't go out of stock, that they can get them at their local stores or at a distributor in Europe and things like that. So it's the business side. It's the not fun thing is what we're having to do right now, I guess, is the long and short of it, right? It's like we get to actually have to work now, right? I got to crunch numbers and make spreadsheets. It's so great. But at the end of the day, it's very exciting. And so hopefully, if all goes well, we will be bottling in this room I'm standing in right now. We just enlarged our facility here by an extra 1,000 feet. And so I'm looking past the camera over here, but I've got a few hundred square feet over there where it already has our automated capping machine, and our filling machines are hitting. And so now once we get all that set up, we'll be bottling paint right in this room. And so then we can control all of that. You know, hey, we're running low on red. Well, then we bottle red tomorrow. And hey, you know, so we can react a lot better to the demand of the paints, because what we've seen is there's no favorite paint. You know, there's a couple we joke about: mahogany, jade, white. Obviously sells out really quick, but it always changes, right? It changes. Like sometimes it's like, what army just came out for your favorite game, and if that's everybody's favorite army, then all of a sudden ultramarine blue is our biggest seller, right? And we need to. we're learning that, well, we either have millions of bottles of every color, so we never have to flex that way, or because we're a small business, we just need to be able to react quicker. So that, oh, what's transparency, now that we've talked about them and shown people and done an expose, and other streamers have done it, transparency are starting to sell real quick. So now we can just say, okay, halt the presses, fill transparency today.
Well,
And so we're super excited. I mean, this is it sounds so simple from a business standpoint, but it's such a huge deal for us.
I know for a fact that you have a great product. Your paints are really good. But I think what really sets us all apart is you and your attitude. When you came to Warfare Weekend, I was really blown away that you gave a set of your paints out to our hobby room for them to test out and try. Actually, 2 sets of paints, not just 1 set, 2 sets of paints. And at Warfare Weekend this year, you are going to be supplying the paints for the hobby room for the classes, which blows me away even more because, I mean, it is money out of your pocket and stuff and everything, but you have a general interest of making sure that people are doing good and people are having a good time and they're getting to do this, because I know for a fact that when I brought your paints to our, and I always go, it is the Warfare Weekend, fort, because I kind of modeled it after Fort Wapple, for people to hang out and paint, that when people got a hold of it and were using it, which I still have the paints and everything, they were like, fuck you, Gonzo. Now I have to go buy the whole set. And I said, good, because that's what I want. Get your bat up there and go help out my man Jason, because he came out and provided his product awesome for everybody to test. And people were really impressed with it. And I think that's what it is you care more about what happens to the hobbyist / gamer than making that extra buck type thing. That you look out for the people that will buy your product.
Yeah, it's a struggle as I dread to say the word salesman, but as a businessman and as somebody that is, you got to feed your own family, you got to make the money, you got to do the thing, right? And you got the 9 to 5, and you've decided to do it as a passion project, which is let's monetize what we love. I paint, I love the hobby. Jen had nothing to do with the hobby, but now she paints and loves the hobby. And so I've always been a person that thinks that it's viral, bad word for today's climate, right? but it really is, right? It's viral in that your own energy is what you convey, and the truth of that energy tends to get people excited or put them off or whatever. And I'd rather have people excited because we're excited, and our excitement is about the hobby. Yes, it's about our products. We love our products. We try to make products that fill a need that we have, that are, whether it's a shortcoming that doesn't exist, or changing something that fills a hole in a different way and makes things easier. But our whole push is the hobby. We want to see more people enjoy the hobby and be introduced to the hobby. And if we can do that and get people pumped, we say it on stream all the time, I don't care what products you're using. We'd love for you to try our products. And if they fit for you, great. But what we really want to do is get you more confident in the hobby as a whole, so that you stick with it, so that you don't just buy that box set, put together some of the models, glue your fingers together, spill paint all over the place, and then put it in the closet and forget about it or throw it away. And people don't understand how much that happens. So how can we do and deliver the hobby to people in a way that makes them want to stick around? And conventions are already such a great thing because the social aspect of it is so great, right? That if you can meet a friend that you didn't have before you showed up, if you can talk to your hero, if you can, meet the guys that make the game, try out a new product, that's already a neat, positive situation.
Yeah.
And so for us to support, that's easy. Like it's almost a no-brainer, right? It's like, we're like, yes, if you have a convention where people, and you've put forth the effort and gotten people there, we want to support the hobby, let's do it. If we can do it without dying, we'll do it. That's our goal. So.
All right, let's go and switch to the media section. We have, and of course your screen is of course wide. Gotta love this. But this is our section where we talk about things that we've watched, done ever. We've given you a brief rundown of our rating systems. People that are new to the stream.
I'm gonna totally forget and mess this up.
We always do a recap.
Tell everybody about the media section.
All right, so the media section, we have a rating. We have 2 rating systems. Ratings from Cats, which is the newest movie that came out, to Casablanca. Cats being the worst movie ever made, Casablanca being the greatest movie ever made. And then we have another rating where we get a little bit more specific, where it is space herpes. The fewer space herpes, the better the movie. Casablanca would, of course, be 0 space herpes, where Cats would be probably ranking past 5 space herpes. So we got a 5 just for the top of it. And since you are the special guest, what media would you like to talk about? We don't spoil anything that's new. Older movies, of course, are you can spoil away, but anything that's new, recent, within the last 6 months to a year, we kind of keep it kind of spoiler free. So, Jason, what do you got for us?
Oh boy. Well, like I said earlier, I think you said you were going to talk about it too. I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm a big movie guy, but with the lockdown, movies have been tough, right? Because it's like we just don't do that. And it's weird because Jen and she watches TV as a thing that goes on in the background, but she has her shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't watch TV. I like to focus on movies. So it's always like, hey, let's watch this. I don't want to stare at the TV for 2 hours kind of thing. But lately we've been going back and we watched season 1 of The Umbrella Academy and have started into season 2. And we do that a lot, as I think a lot of people do when you're trying to catch up with, something new. And so I think that being a comic book nerd, that's a big one for me. And do I just rate it? Do I just give you a rating?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. What do you? I mean, you're not done with.
I think the Umbrella Academy as a whole, the way that they pulled it off on TV, even with short budget for season 1, and the gorilla suit was kind of gumboed together and wasn't the best thing ever. It was easy for me to treat it like Doctor Who, like the suspension of disbelief. I don't really care. The effects aren't what I'm here for. It's the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd put it at, I would think, is it right to say like 1.5 space herpes?
I can agree with that. I had already actually finished season 2 already, and I think that's what I gave season 2 was like 1 to 1.5 space herpes. There were some flaws, but it wasn't like over glaring flaws that were like, fuck, this sucks. It's like, it has a little bit of downtime, a little bit of stuff, but was still a great, good, fun time.
I am only 2 episodes into the second season, and I actually like it better than the first season already.
It's a lot more cohesive. The thing is like if I don't know if you've read the comics, right? But it's kind of like I go back to a Spider-Man movie that happened, and even Iron Man, and the way Marvel has done their superheroes is that they've started with the origin stories being these people that aren't good just automatically in a suit, right?
Correct.
That they have to learn their powers. And so I think what we're seeing in season 2 is a little bit of that. And I'm only 2 into it, right? But that's what happened in the books, right? Is that these kids didn't even know the full extent of what they were doing, even after they'd been doing it for so many years, because it was not, it just wasn't done right. And so I found that, I think that the show is great. I don't find very many story mishaps. I think everything is more visual and timing, because of editing. I think maybe you miss some of the bouncing around a little bit. But I'm weird. I try not to get hung up on that, especially on properties that I know something about, because it's too easy to get in there and be like, oh, they messed that up. And I don't want to be that. If I'm going to take the time to watch the show, I just want to enjoy it. Yeah, sometimes it's hard, but I try to give it the benefit of the doubt on this one. I've been able to. I think it's great. And Jen's loving it, and she doesn't really go in for that stuff. She's never been a sci-fi fantasy person. And so having met me, not only do we have her painting little men now, but now she's opening up and enjoying some of the comic book movies and the Avengers movies and stuff like that. So it's been fun watching her as she enjoys the Umbrella Cat. She loves the music and Klaus. And, there's so many great characters in it. You can't.
The music is just amazing in this, but I mean it's all really good songs. So they did really good. Yeah, season 1 was great. I think I'll maybe gave that a 1 when it first came out. And season 2 I give it about a 1.5 because there's a little bit of things, but of course non-spoilers. Not going to say anything. But I mean I didn't. It's definitely on the watch and keep going.
Can I talk about a book?
Oh, of course. Yeah. We go for it.
So I do more audiobook listening than I do TV watching because I paint so much. And
of
so
course.
When I'm painting and when I'm driving in the car to and from the studio, I'm always got an audiobook on. And so lately I'm doing the Siege of Terra, the Horus Heresy novel.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a big 40K world, and I can't say I'm a lore guy because you'd blow me away if it was a trivia day. I don't know all the trivia, but I enjoy getting immersed in the lore and listening to the books. And so having the Black Library and audiobook has been one of the greatest things in the history of mankind to me. And so listening to these books, I think, has been really fun. I feel like they are kind of the culmination of the whole Horus heresy. I went back, I haven't listened to all the books. I can't do it. Some of them are garbage, and some of them are fantastic. So it's such an up and down ride for me. But I came out of the Flight of the Eisenstein and the Buried Dagger, which are some of the quintessential Horus heresy books on how things progressed from the fall of Horus and all of that. I just love this story. But these have been pretty good. I would say that if I'm using the same space herpes thing, that right now I'm at about the same. I'm at about 1 to 1.5 space herpes on the Siege of Terra book so far. I'm only about halfway through book 2, and I know that we've only got 4 out right now. But I'm really looking forward to Saturnine from Dan Abnett, one of my favorite writers in the Black Library. But as a series, I like the way it's put together. I'm one of those guys that's always really enjoyed the fact that they've allowed the writers to kind of do this overlapping timeline thing, which is a really neat way for me to wrap my head into a story, is to see it not only from different perspectives, protagonist, antagonist, but also from like the ground level of like an Imperial Guard grunt, or somebody that was a butcher yesterday but got conscripted today because Angron's coming, and I love it. I know that a lot of people review some of the Horus Heresy books and say, well, it wasn't Space Marines killing Space Marines from page 1 to page 365, and I like the nuances in some of the writers, and it's been fun to watch some of the Games Workshop writers grow. You get like the Guy Haley's, and you get these people that from their first book to where they're at now, you're like, wow, this is really good writing. And so I've really enjoyed it. I think more of a journey that they've created from the whole heresy is maybe what I'm reviewing here, even the warts and all for the bad books. But I've had a lot of fun. I think it's good. I would strongly suggest, even if you don't know a whole lot about it, if you want to get immersed in that the Siege of Terra has been pretty good. It hasn't been one where I feel like you have to know everything that led up to it to dive in, which I think is also a good job of them.
Kathy, you got something for this week?
In addition to watching the first couple episodes of The Umbrella Academy, yesterday, for the first time, now, I love James Bond, okay? I've watched them since I was a kid, watching them with my dad, and I've seen almost all of them, and I realized that I have not seen the Timothy Dalton ones. So yesterday I watched The Living Daylights for the first time.
Yeah, Living Daylights, yeah.
And I enjoyed it. It was everything that I would want in a James Bond movie. It had the cheese, it had the bad guys, it had the explosions, the chase scenes, oh, James at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, James. At the end of every single one, right? You have to have it. And that cracked me up. But I like Timothy Dalton. My friend's like, yeah, Timothy Dalton, he's like the best one. I'm like, I still kind of disagree. After having seen that, I like him. But Sean Connery is my favorite. It's like your first Doctor, Tom Baker, my favorite Doctor, Doctor Who. Sean Connery, still my favorite Bond.
So I gotta break in and say that I'm with you. Sean Connery was always my favorite Bond until Daniel Craig.
I love Daniel Craig too. He's like my second. It's like my David Tennant if I'm going on the Doctor Who scale.
Yeah.
I have Tom Baker, and then David Tennant is a close second. But yeah. So but I still give it like 2 space herpes because, so much cheese. But I love it. But yeah, a couple space herpes. I think that's fair.
Well, I decided to try something new. Since I have HBO Max, I've been watching Doom Patrol, and I finished season 1, and I'm going to give a better review of that later, because season 2 is up, and season 2 is actually much shorter than season 1, and I was just going to do it all as one. But on HBO Max, they have Perry Mason, which is Matthew Rise is his name. He played one of the Russians in The Americans, which is another great series. But it's Perry Mason, and the time frame is in 1937, before he became the attorney and such. This is like the prequel to the actual TV series.
This is like pre-war Perry Mason.
Yeah, well, actually, it's right after the war. because they even bring that into the story that it's right after the war. Um,
Wait, in
and
37?
1937, I think, is when they say it was. Because he talks about the war a little bit in the first episode.
That,
I don't know.
that does not fit the timeline of World War II.
I don't know. Maybe that's what they say it is on the little blurb. So I'll have to dig into it a little bit more. But it is before he
I'll
becomes.
turn into a nerd.
It's before he becomes the attorney type thing. Um, and so it says, being a private detective. This is a more adult version. There is nudity, a lot of cussing. Um, there is what's really weird to see now is people smoking in the theater, people drinking and driving. All this stuff that you don't see or hear about. But they keep to the period of the time. Smoking, nobody cared. They smoked wherever. They drank wherever. But I'm actually really digging it. It is really good. One, I enjoy the timeline. I enjoy the time that it's in because you're looking at stuff and you're like, oh, of course he can't do that because that shit wasn't invented yet. He's like taking pictures with a camera and it's like, click, click, and it's like all this developing of the film and all this other stuff. But it's really good. The story's just started. You're just now learning about the characters. I'm only one episode in so far, and I'm liking it. It's actually pretty good. I'm going to keep watching it, see what it is. I'm not going to give it a rating yet because it's only one episode, but it has been renewed for another season, so I feel like I can put my marbles in on this type thing. So I'm actually enjoying it. I'm going to keep going with it.
I so want to see that because I'm an old school Perry Mason nerd. It's another show I used to watch with my dad, and they have it in reruns right
Oh,
now
yeah.
on local TV, and it is weird in Perry Mason to see them all smoking cigars, cigarettes. All the guys have these pinky rings,
Yep.
and they have answering services. So like they'll be at somebody's house, some random person's house, the phone rings and it's for them, and I'm like, how do people know where they are?
Yeah.
There's no cell phones. There's not even, pay phones yet, really. It's interesting, and I want to see prequel Perry Mason, young Perry Mason.
Yeah, okay. So I'm looking it up, and it's in 1932, and it's after World War One, which is 1914 to 1918.
That's weird.
So it's in Los Angeles, 1932. There is a big story plot going on, and it's just now started. So there's a small bit of building of the story, but right now it's a bit of character building, and it's been pretty good and pretty fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm gonna keep it on my list. It is on HBO Max for everybody because that's where I was doing the Doom Patrol because Doom Patrol season 1. I just finished it, and I'm working on season 2, and season 2 is a little bit shorter, so I'm going to do a big one on that one. What was anything else? I did, this last week, I did watch all the Indiana Jones trilogy, because there are only 3 Indiana Jones movies.
We all know this to be true.
Yes. There is only 3. And, looking back and watching Indiana Jones, yes, the special effects are dated. It's going to be like that. We understand that. There's not a big issue. But the stories and everything behind it has been really good. And so instead of rating them as in space RPs, we decided to rate them which ones are the best in your personal opinion. I have to go with Raiders as my favorite, with Last Crusade, and then the third one is Temple of Doom. Just because, to me, that one wasn't as cool as the other one. I mean,
I really liked Temple of Doom, I have to say.
The thing is there's nothing wrong with it. It's just we were talking about it. I was like, how do we rate them? And like one of the person I was watching it with, they think Last Crusade is the best one just because Sean Connery and you get to see a little bit of background of Indiana and stuff like that. So I mean, there's 0 space RPs in the overall grand scheme, but they're just so freaking classic. Special effects weren't a thing as it is. The stunts were done with stunt people. The explosions were done with real explosions. when a thing broke, it was a real thing that they destroyed. So I mean, it's just a great solid series. So 0 Space RPs, but we wanted to rate them, and which one we liked first, second, and third. Guys, we are coming to the end of the show. We do have to wrap this up as much as we like talking, and we could probably go on for hours talking about movies, books, and
I was going to
all
say,
the other
this
stuff.
is like the part where you can be like, oh, we could just talk forever.
Yes, but we do have to set a limit because people have to do
a
things.
really bad movie I just saw.
Oh, okay. Well, here we will let you go with the last one.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and we'll let you have the final word on the
I'm not
movie
even going to
section.
remember. I think it's called like Dark of the Night. It's one of these things that I think was on Netflix. Have you heard of this? It was like the UFO 1950s UFO show. Dark in the Sky. Maybe Dark in the Sky. I don't remember what it is.
Well, tell us a bit about it.
It was horrible, though.
It's god awful. It's horrible. It's like this. It's this like UFO abduction thing in the 50s, and the setting was really cool. It's like at a high school basketball game, and the whole town in this small town is I think it's in Arizona. The whole town is collected at this high school basketball game, and supposedly when all the people in town get together in one location, the aliens do their thing outside so they can't be found out. And the characters it was just from front to back, and I watched the whole thing and fought through it, and it was horrible. I would say if we're doing the space herpes thing, it's a solid 4.5. And it's not even because it's like bad to watch it. It was kind of cool to watch the old cars, the period stuff they got right. Kathy made me think about it, or whenever we talk about like, everybody with the messaging service and stuff, right? Because one of the characters worked at the switchboard for the phones, right? And so they did it really well, like how the switchboard worked and all of that. But it was just like it had this build up where you were like, where is this going? And then it ended and you're like, what? Like, really? You just wasted 2 hours of my time for this? Oh, it's horrible.
That's how
The
I
Vast
felt
of
about
Night?
The Exorcist, oddly. But
Is
we
it-
could talk forever.
Is it called The Vast of Night?
Vast of Night. Yes, that's what it is.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's on Amazon right now, and
yeah.
let's see. They actually give it really good ratings. Some
I would
people.
love for you guys to watch it and tell me how wrong I am, and tell me that I was just not paying attention, and that I missed some big thing that was I needed to have seen it because I got up and poured myself a glass of milk or something. But man, I kept wanting to go backtrack like 30 seconds, hit the reverse button, and say I must have missed something because this can't be what they're doing with this movie. Like nobody paid money for somebody to go produce this pile of garbage, did they? And
Yeah.
I let things go, and I was like, at the end of it, I was like, I'm gonna go slit my wrist. This was horrible.
Yeah, it's 89 minutes runtime. It's got like a 6.7 rating on IMDb and a 92% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Huh.
Okay,
Shows
I'm gonna have
how
to
out
go.
of touch I am.
I'm gonna-
That must be it.
I will put that on my queue and watch it. The audience score though is like a 64%, so it must be because I think one of the reviews says it is a great sci-fi movie written and directed by a talented alien. So I'll have to put that on my list, and I'll message you and give you my rating. Yeah, because it's
I
based
felt like
in.
it was somebody that really said that they could do Close Encounters better than Close Encounter than Spielberg did, and they failed miserably.
All right, I'm gonna have to do it. I'll put that on my list and watch it while I'm putting miniatures together. So, well, Jason, it is the end of the podcast. We really appreciate you being here. It has been an awesome time. I'm glad you came on. For a minute to know, Kathy did link his Twitch channel inside the stream. And the website. Guys, check out these paints. These paints are really good. I know if you can't get them right now, hold on. Jason's trying his hardest. If he could, teleport them to you with a beam of energy, he would do it. But
Well, that being said, we do have like 58 colors in stock, so there's a lot of paint in stock. Just there's a couple out that are preventing us from making like the sets that everybody loves.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing is that on the site you can build your own set and get the same discount you would from the set. You're gonna miss bold pyro red and titanium white are out of stock right now.
Go check them out. When do you stream, by the way? That way people know when to tune in.
Yeah, so we're on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. We stream today from noon to 4, but we do Tuesdays 2 to 5, Thursdays from 3 to 6 or 3 to 7, and Fridays 5 to 8.
Okay. Guys, go check them out. Next week, John, Kathy, and I will be back for some more shenanigans. We want to thank everybody for listening, everybody watching. If you're first time, we'll have up on the Facebook page and everywhere else, so you can go see and check them out. For More Than Dice, I'm Gonzo.
I'm Kathy.
And I'm Jason, and thanks for having me. This has been great.
Good night, people. And here's the music. The music's playing. You may watch it at the same time.
Like I won't watch it again. It's horrible, but I'll have your voice on. I'll turn the voice thing on so I can listen to what you guys are seeing as it's happening.
We'll set up a mini chat.